This is 51 Stories, and this week I'm writing a folklore-inspired fantasy short story and decided to go with a creation myth. Welcome to 51 Stories, the channel where my name is Johan, share an original short story once a week, almost every week of the year. Every Monday, I'm given a random assignment from my AI editor, and every Friday is my deadline. This week, I was tasked with writing a folklore-inspired fantasy short story on the theme of loss and grief. The story is supposed to be this lyrical and poetic legend that's supposed to sound like it's been told around a campfire for generations. I also got a one-word story spark supposed to get me going, and this week's word is crown. So, if you're ready, here's this week's short story with the very long title of The First Word, the legend of how the dreamers created the written world. At the dawn of time, there was an island. The island was a remnant of the drowned world, which is why it was called Remnant Island. On Remnant, the last of the speakers lived. They had saved their little piece of existence in the infinite ocean of ink by using their words to ward off the Leviathan that had roiled the ocean and drowned the world. Every day of this everlasting night, the speakers gathered on the shore, speaking words into the sea. This kept the waves at bay, but only as long as they said things the ocean had not heard before. Before the drowning of the world, the speakers had stored their precious words in trees and the souls of the animals who could not speak for themselves. But on Remnant, no animals remained, and only one of the trees still stood, long since wordless. Meanwhile, the Leviathan, the night serpent, lingered in the deep, coiled around the roots of Remnant. The ancient monster was biding its time, waiting for the speakers to grow silent. Alone in the drowned world, the speakers grieved, both the world they had lost and the future destined for the waves. They all knew that the day would come when their words would turn to wails. On that day, the night serpent would rise from the deep and devour the remnant, and the world would become nothing but the eternal abyss that was the ocean of ink. But what the speakers did not know was that among them there was a boy who would convince the ocean to give the world back. His name was Ao, the first dreamer. Even the dreams of the speakers had sunk into the darkness. They could no longer remember dreaming of anything but black waves. That was why Ao found it so strange to awake to the rising moon with the image of something else floating on the surface of his mind. Ao had dreamt of the tree. It stood by itself on a moonlit hill of rock and dust, a gnarled and weathered old thing, nary a leaf in its crown. "You called on me in a dream," Ao said to the tree. The tree didn't answer, of course, but instead of leaving, Ao, tired after a restless night, lay down under it to sleep. For what use was it rushing to the shore when the end was inevitable? Fast asleep against the rough trunk, Ao dreamed again. In this dream, the tree spoke. I called you to speak with me, Ao, the tree said in a slow, creaking voice. It has been a long time since any of your kind came to fill me with words. Nowadays, all you do is take. We must give our words to the ocean, Ao said, thinking it strange that the tree couldn't see this. We have to keep the waves from drowning Remnant, or the world will be lost forever. I see, said the tree. Then it seemed to think for a while. I have kept a word in secret. If you vow to come back to speak to me, I will give it to you. To himself, Ao thought the tree selfish to have kept words from them in such desperate times, but instead of berating it, he accepted. Then take this word, Ao, and when you awake, go join the others on the shore. But do not give the word to the sea. Instead, ask of it. When Ao awoke, he did as he had been told and joined the others on the shore. The other speakers all chided him for not coming sooner, for the sea had grown wild during the night. They had been busy calming the waves, feeding the ocean with their words, hoping to appease its hunger at least one more day. To make up for his absence, Ao spent what words he had left. But the waves were still crashing against Remnant, eating away at it like never before. So, not knowing what else to do, Ao used the last word he had, the one given to him by the tree. "Give us light!" he shouted at the raging sea. This caused the other speakers to fall silent and stare at him. "You don't ask of the ocean of ink, boy," they yelled. "You give!" But they stopped when a blinding light rose out of the darkness. An orb the size of Remnant itself broke the surface of the ocean of ink. As it ascended into the sky, the hungry waves subsided. The speakers all shielded their eyes. "Look what you have done!" they shouted at Ao. But when the warmth of the light spread across Remnant, the elders told everyone to be quiet, for the elders had seen the world before it drowned, and they knew what this was. The elders marveled. Ao had somehow found words that made the ocean give instead of take. They demanded he show them where these words came from, and to placate them, Ao said he'd found them in a dream. This stirred even more memories in the older speakers. Yes, words given in dreams! As soon as the bright orb sank back into the sea, they were all fast asleep, trying to dream of words. Everyone but Ao. He kept his promise to the tree and returned under the light of the moon. There he sat, speaking to it till he fell asleep. As the light rose out of the ocean the next day, the speakers returned to the shore, but only Ao's words could make the ocean give. "Give us kin!" Ao demanded. On the horizon, the speakers spotted what the elders called a ship. On the ship arrived other speakers who had escaped their own sinking island. For many a moon they had drifted aimlessly on the ocean, thinking they were the last of their kind, slowly sailing into the night. But they were not like the speakers of Remnant, for these were women. Each of them took a husband among the men, and under the light of their sun and the moon, they rediscovered many a word together. Among the women was a girl named Oa. Too young to take a husband, she settled for a playmate in Ao. The children spent their days exploring Remnant, Ao now seeing his home through the eyes of Oa. This awakened many a tale and memory in him, and with every moonrise they would visit the old tree and tell it of their adventures. The tree returned the favor with more words. Ao grew ever more creative in his demands of the ocean of ink. Soon, Remnant was teeming with life and adventure for him and Oa to experience. And as their tales grew taller, the tree gifted them ever more peculiar words. But deep in the ocean of ink still lingered the night serpent, coiled around the roots of their world. It had noticed that the speakers were no longer sinking their words into the darkness. So, as curious as it was furious, it sent its minions out of the sea to find out what the speakers were up to. These creatures were the Inklings, spawn of the night serpent, taking all kinds of horrific shapes as they crawled onto the shores of Remnant. At first, the speakers huddled in fear as the Inklings invaded their woods, killed their game, and hunted their children. They stalked them in the shadow of night, luring them with ethereal lights. They even attempted to cut down the old tree. But Ao and Oa had grown old and bold enough to see the monsters for what they were, calls to even taller tales. The only thing the Inklings feared was the sun Ao had brought from the sea. So they built a wall around the tree with a tower atop the wall where the speakers could dwell in safety. Then Ao and Oa caught the sun and fixed it to the top of the tower. The light nourished the tree and kept the Inklings at bay. This was the lighthouse. As the young hero and heroine went from telling tales to living legends, their powers grew until one day, standing atop the tower, Ao said to Oa, "I am going to demand that the ocean bring the old world back." Oa looked at Ao, now a man that she had grown to love. She said, "Bringing back the world would require many words." So they went to speak to the tree. The tree had now regained its strength, growing new branches and boughs, its crown green with a leaf for every tale the young couple had told. They told them this latest tale, and in their dreams the tree spoke to them, saying that the old world was dead. There was no bringing it back. The night serpent had devoured it. At this, Ao and Oa were struck with sadness and despair. "Fret not, young dreamers," said the tree. "While the old world is digested in the belly of the night serpent, your tales will make a new one. Keep dreaming, and your world will rise to the surface." All they had to do was tell the tallest tale they could think of, and the tree would provide them with the words they needed. The next day, Ao and Oa went to the shore and spoke to the sea. They started with a bridge, and the bridge led to more land, and through the land cut a river, and along the river a wild land cropped up. But this was just the setting. For a world to exist, there had to be more people like them who could imagine this new world, who could live and experience it into existence. So Ao and Oa had children and sent them off on their own adventures, and for every tale they told, the world grew into a story that told itself. And that is how the dreamers created the written world. Yet, that is not the end. Under the lighthouse, in caverns dug deep into the core of Remnant Island, the children of Ao and Oa, the bards, built a library for the stories of their kin. There, the story of the drowned world remains, told in the architecture itself. But time has made it legend, and prosperous times have made it myth. The bards may have long since forgotten its true meaning, but the ocean of ink never forgets. In its darkest depths, the world devourer remains, biding its time until the day the children of Ao and Oa run out of words. And on that day, the night serpent will rise and drown the world. All right, that was the first word, the legend of how the dreamers created the written world. This was just sort of a coincidence. I got the assignment, wondered what folklore-inspired fantasy would even look like. And then when I read the description by the AI that said, write something that sounds like it's been told around a campfire for generations or whatever, I realized that I already had that story, sort of. I didn't have this story. I just had like a framework for it, because this is actually part of a larger world building project I've got going on for a much bigger story, like a novel-sized story, or several novels-sized story, maybe. And I needed to flesh that out, or I have been fleshing it out for years. And I just took this opportunity to use this story challenge to write a bit of a short story. I don't know if I will ever use this in the official canon or in the story itself, but it's a great exercise to just build stuff like this into a larger world or a larger context to inform me of how the inhabitants of that world works and how they perceive the magic and the origins of their world and all of that stuff. So, yeah, it was a fun exercise, and it's a fun tone as well to write, because you tap into this sort of mythical, legendary, almost religious tone that's authoritative might not be the right term, but it feels like you're telling the truth, even though you're obviously telling something that is impossible. Like I mean, that is what myth and legend is, right? It's this weird thing where it's obviously a fairy tale, or at least that's the way we look at it, right? We look at it as something that obviously can't be true. I mean, there's no ocean of ink. There's no people speaking suns out of the ocean and catching them to put them on the top of lighthouses to ward off evil night serpent seed or whatever. But it still sounds like the truth. And that's the weird thing about that that type of tone in these types of stories. And it was, as I was writing it, it felt like the truth as well, which is a very strange experience. And that is why I highly recommend for people who enjoy stories, who enjoy listening to stories, to also write their own. Write your own stories. And don't think about which stories to write or how to write, or just sit down and write whatever comes to mind, because the experience of writing and experiencing a story just coming out of nowhere it's very profound in a way. It's part of human experience, definitely. And it's a mistake to miss out on it, because it's such a weird thing when you sort of tap into something that's not, it doesn't feel like it's in your head. It feels like it's from somewhere. And I mean, a lot of artists have talked about this for a long time. The one I always think about is Bob Dylan, talking about having sort of an antenna to this ethereal plane where songs come from. Neil Young talked about how he went out looking for songs, and it was like walking through the woods, and some songs would just come up to you like they were tame pets almost, and you could just take, and other songs were like these very cautious deers or stags that you had to like coax out of their dens or whatever. And that experience is such a, it's part of experiencing the psyche and part of experiencing the mind, I think. And this type of story really brings that out, because the other stories I've written so far, they're just stories. They're just tellings or tales about people or whatever. It's except for that surrealist one I wrote. But they're still just stories, and this one is something else. You can tap into that where all of a sudden you're looking at the page and it feels like you wrote something that you didn't know, which is very strange. It's very paradoxical. Like it feels like you've written something that is true, but that you didn't know. And yeah, I hope it turned into a good tale for your ears as well, and not just for my expression or whatever. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you didn't enjoy this, then perhaps you will enjoy the next one. I will be writing more stories, as implied by the title of this channel. You can also follow this channel on Instagram. It's 51 Stories Told to get updates on upcoming episodes. If you want to read the stories in your own voice, they are available on 51stories.substack.com for free. And what else? Okay. Have a great one, and all hail the eternal Storyboros.